just got done editing this interview I had with Katelyn's biological dad, Matthew Davis. The reason I had to edit it was because there was about I want to say, 15-minute period at the end of the audio where we were talking about extremely off-topic things that really did not need to be included. He was out of town for work, and at the beginning, he is outdoors. You can hear a lot of wind, but eventually the audio becomes clearer. I want to apologize ahead of time to those who think that I'm a professional, and so when they stumble upon these types of interviews, if you will, they are annoyed by my voice or my need to jump in, interrupt, things like that. I am not a professional. I don't try to be a professional. You have to remember, Matthew reached out to me in 2017 and sent me an email wanting me to answer questions for the public for him on my platform. So I did not reach out to him. He reached out to me. This particular interview was initiated because he left a comment on my YouTube channel remarking on my recent upload about the band Vitriol, using the audio of Katelyn's dying moment where she's gasping for air and you can hear her kicking the bucket. That is what initiated this interview. He himself said that this can be uploaded. He was the one who threw that idea out first, not me. So I'm putting all that out there because even though, I don't really care if y'all say it, it's just I like there to be clarity. And a lot of people tend to think that I reached out to him or that, I'm a professional and I'm just really bad at my job. This is not my job. This is just something that I really care about. And a lot of us who are into this case, we could have been a Katelyn. We could have been in her position because of a lot of the same family member type dynamic that she went through. And so that's why we feel the need to talk about it as we do. So that's really just a disclaimer I wanted to put out there. So the way it starts out is I called up, I said hello, he said hello, and then I read his comment and I said, okay, would you like to talk about it now? And then that's how it starts off. So I didn't include the ringing and the hello like I did in the previous interview because I feel like that's just a waste of time and it's unnecessary. I also want to apologize for some of the political climate of the conversation. We start delving a little into women's rights and things like that. Believe it or not, that is relevant to what we're talking about as it pertains to the system that kept Katelyn living with Tammy and Anthony. For the third time, I want to apologize for something else. I want to also apologize if I sound like I'm getting attitude and heated toward Matthew. I do get a little heated and I do get some attitude, but it is not at all coming from a mindless, selfish place. We ended up leaving the conversation on a, note of, I don't want to say love, but of compassion, I would say. So there is an understanding between him and myself that may not have been conveyed in this audio. I am honored that he feels that he trusts me. I think there's a good mutual trust there. But at the same time, I'm not going to withhold integrity. I'm not going to set aside my integrity. I'm still gonna speak my mind and say what really upsets me that dealt with Katelyn. I want to add, upon editing, realized that it sounds like I'm harping on him about not making enough effort to see Katelyn. I want to make it known that most of the comments I get on a bi-daily basis are from either dads or kids in Katelyn's positions. Well, they're not kids anymore, but they were. And they feel like he should have made more of an effort to see Katelyn. So that is the reason that I keep digging and digging deeper to figure out why he couldn't fight the system. I will say that I'm, obviously not a dad. I never have had to get, lawyered up and put forth so much time and money into doing what he would have had to do to see Katelyn. I want to make that known. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure to ask him the questions that people leave as comments to his previous interview all the time. So that's that. I hope that y'all maybe learn something from this. I don't know. but here it goes.
I understand why there are people within the family that want to move on from the situation. That's probably what really set me off, is I don't want to have to talk about his mother every day. Right? I mean, I'm definitely not going to do it in public. I'm not going out in public and talking about my daughter all the time. She's not coming back. And nobody really wants to deal with the reality of the situation, which is, I was asked several times, what can be done to stop this from happening? And I gave my opinion on that. But nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to deal with the reality. They want a bad guy to point their finger at.
Well, Anthony's the one that tormented your daughter. So. Well,
there's multiple bad guys in the situation. There's not a singular bad guy. It just wasn't a murder. Right? It's not as if you could say, this is the person that pulled the trigger.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he, according to Katelyn, was touching her sexually, and then telling her to hang her.
Yeah, I got that. According to Katelyn, but you don't have any proof of that, do you? You have according to Katelyn. That's my daughter. I would trust what my daughter says.
But it was never even looked into to be disproven or proven.
Well, that's kind of hard to look into when the sole witness is no longer alive.
Well, her phone, the antagonist who told her to hang herself got on her account within hours after she hung herself.
Well, I'm working on getting her phone.
Well, the state, I mean, they should have...
Nobody could possibly feel more pain about all of this than me. And I would say Tammy. But Tammy's a fucking terrible person. And in the last 2 years, Tammy has done nothing but prove me more correct in that she's a terrible fucking person.
Last I heard, she's been passing her drug tests and...
One drug test. She passed one drug test. And that's after I had to call the law on her for showing up at my fucking house. Walking through the woods.
She should be given help, I feel.
Help? Yeah. She needs help.
And I fear she's going to overdose.
Well, how is she going to overdose if she's passing drug tests?
Well, I mean, people can legally get drunk and pass out and die. Or aspirin. You can take a whole bottle of aspirin and...
Tammy is getting what Tammy deserves. You have to lay in the bed that you make. You reap the seeds that you sow.
But she, y'all, the two remaining children need a mother.
Well, what do you want me to do about that? The state is going to put those children with people that are going to take care of them. Because Tammy can't do it. Tammy has never been able to do it. Tammy couldn't take care of Katelyn. But she didn't have any problem with keeping me from taking care of Katelyn. Because Tammy has never cared about anybody except for Tammy. About like what any terrible person would do. I told Tammy at the funeral that was the last time. That was it. That was the last time that I was going to deal with her in any manner that was halfway cordial. She dragged me through the mud. She used my only child against me as a weapon. And even if you want to try to put all of this on Anthony, I didn't marry Anthony. I didn't bring Anthony into my daughter's life. She did all of that.
That's true. She said that she did, contact police and try to get them to make him stay away, and that wasn't successful.
Yeah, and she also said I didn't pay child support, and she's made up all these fucking lies that aren't true. That aren't true. Do you know what I carry in my wallet?
What?
The last 2 receipts from child support. From the child support that I had to pay 4 months after my daughter was dead.
See, here's the thing. When so much time goes by and we're outraged, and by we, I'm just talking about people who love your daughter. Like, I talked to Anthony for 5 minutes, I want to say a year and a half ago, and he referred to Katelyn as sick in the head, and so did his 2 daughters. I never published that, but it's clear that he has his daughters brainwashed into thinking Katelyn was sick and that she was mentally ill, even though she was actually extremely intelligent and very logical. And
Yeah, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Anthony is a terrible fucking person.
So from the outside looking in, though, the public, we see this person, and we know for a fact that had she not come from poverty, had she come from at least a middle class, like these other kids you see on the news, that they would have at least looked into her phone and looked into Anthony's to see what kind of messages he deleted, to see what possibly drove her to that point. But they didn't even look into it. So yeah, granted, it's her word with no solid evidence, but
How do you know they didn't look into her phone?
Because it's still sitting there without any. Well, there's a source.
You don't know what they did. What I'm saying is you have a narrative that you've spun in your mind.
No, I'm talking the same source that you spoke to today.
You have no idea what that department did. You don't know because they wouldn't have told you.
No, that you're right. They wouldn't have told me.
That's how investigations work. They can't tell you what they're doing within the investigation. They can't do it because they can't risk ruining evidence.
Okay, but it's been so long.
When you talk about things within the evidential process.
So is the case still open?
No, the case isn't open now.
Well, then, so they can tell you if they looked at her phone then.
Well, I don't know what they're going to tell you.
No, you. They can tell you.
You don't know. Well, they might be able to tell me.
Right, and that's what a lot of us.
I said when Detective Hearn got shot and killed, I said, that's it. You go ahead and chop it up.
It would.
I called it right off the get-go.
I think it would.
I was okay with it. I said, I'm okay with it. Because Tammy is living her nightmare right now.
But not Anthony.
Anthony's going to get what's coming to him. I'm not God. I don't believe in God. But I know a lot of people in America do. And the last time I checked, God is the only one who gets past judgment on people. So I don't really understand why everybody else is so set on getting justice for somebody. They don't know.
It's not even about justice. It's about trying to make someone have to spend the rest of their life suffering the way that they made a child suffer.
Yeah, that's called justice. And it's like, it's really getting to that point where this is just mob mentality shit.
It is, actually.
Vigilante justice.
It is mob.
I don't agree with any of that.
Well, how?
I don't agree with any of that because you don't know, right? I don't know how many times we have to see this. How about those Covington Catholic kids that just went through this of being drugged through the fucking mud by everybody, and then it's, oh, well, damn, I guess they were innocent.
They didn't even look into Anthony, though. He didn't get drugged through any mud.
What they did. That's what I'm saying. You don't know what they did.
When you first talked to me, you told me that they, like, wouldn't even do a second autopsy or something along those lines. That they, like, wouldn't...
No, I said they weren't going to tell me anything. That's what I said.
And the case is closed. So they can tell you anything now, that the case is closed.
Well, they can, but will they? I don't know.
They have to. It's your daughter.
They don't have to do anything.
Well, if you were paying child support, they kind of, like, I mean, she's your biological daughter. And it's not fair to call it a mob, actually, because Anthony, unless you think Katelyn was lying, he deserves it. First of all, mobs is when people attack people. Nobody's gone and attacked Anthony. Nobody is actually attacking him. They're calling him out in, like, randomly every other month on YouTube videos. That's, like, hardly going after somebody. That's, like, not really comparable to a mob. He hasn't been drugged through any mud.
I said it's a mob mentality, right? To me, it feels a lot like a mob. And you got mine. I need to. And I'm not upset at you or anybody for that. You're gonna do what you're gonna do, and that's fine. You got every right to do whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say. You have the right to do that.
Well, what if Katelyn was right? What if he did set her off? What if he sent her things and deleted them, and that's why he got on her account, and he told her to hang herself, he'd buy the rope, told her she was worthless, molested her, all of that? What if all that's true? I mean, wouldn't you want him to be not living, like, procreating and dating 18-year-old girls and stuff like he's been doing for the last 2 years?
No, I would. I don't know. I don't know what I would do or what I would want if I knew that everything that was ever told to me was true. But I don't play the what-if games, because what if a frog had wings? What if I could go back and say Mao never took over China and killed 100 million people? It's the what-ifs. They're not.
Yeah, but when, I mean,
what the situation of what evidence do you have?
But the evidence hasn't been examined. The psychiatrist never even got in trouble.
Evidence hasn't been examined that you think hasn't been examined. Right. Getting you upset. Let me talk to her. They got. There's. You either have the evidence or you don't have the evidence.
The phone could have evidence.
And saying that there was evidence and they didn't examine it is not evidence that you have.
Well, they had evidence of Luke Callahan talking to her sexually. They had video evidence. There couldn't possibly be more evidence than they had. They did nothing about that. It took him having to lure a 13-year-old, a different 13-year-old, a year later for him to actually go to jail because of Boston, not because of Georgia. I mean, they didn't even look into it, and the evidence was in their face. Like, hundreds of people were letting them know. So that, I mean...
Okay. Hundreds of people letting the police know of something is not them having evidence of anything.
They were sending video evidence. That's evidence. Of Luke talking sexually to Katelyn, who said that she was 13 in the video, to him. That's evidence. And they did nothing. They were completely incompetent. Even worse, they pushed it aside. And then what does he do? He goes and he rapes a 13-year-old. So that is some fault.
Is Luke Callahan the bad guy? Is that it? Who is the bad guy in all of this?
There doesn't have to be one villain. There doesn't have to be one villain. The psychiatrist should be in trouble. He should not have prescribed Prozac to a 12-year-old and then put her back in the same environment. CPS did not do their job thoroughly. I mean, the list,
Okay.
there doesn't have to be one.
So
I'm not saying.
Then what are we going to do about all of these fat guys?
Approach them as I just said. They've never even been questioned. That means the psychiatrist could do the same thing, just like how Luke Callahan repeated his offense. That's the point of stopping criminal behavior in its tracks, or trying to.
I mean, that's a known statistic for a long time. 95% of the people convicted of a crime either have or will commit the same crime again.
Well, especially if they get away.
Well, it started out with Anthony. Now it's Anthony. Now it's Luke. Now it's CPS. Now
it's always been all those. I've never just. It's always been all those.
Yeah, it has. But I can tell you how all of this doesn't even matter at all, and it's from the very get-go that I've always stated. None of this happens if a biased family court system doesn't just give custody of my daughter to Tammy because she's got a vagina.
So you don't think any of the other factors?
No, nobody wants to face that reality. Nobody wants to face the reality that there are a lot of women in this world that are terrible human beings.
So none of the other factors matter at all. I mean, Luke went and raped a 13-year-old.
Of course they matter. Right? But what you're saying is the drunk driver isn't the only one at fault. It's also the person that makes the alcohol. It's also the person that sold him the alcohol. It's also all of these other things. When all of this could have not happened, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to go to the root of the problem. You just want to put Band-Aids over those problems.
Band-Aids? No, it's about.
You're never going to stop all the criminals.
Right, and that's not what anybody can physically do. That's impossible. That's not what. It's about taking preventative steps, trying to keep it from happening again. Like Luke raping again after he got away with what he did with Katelyn. It's about prevention, or at least trying to. I mean, okay, so the system's effed up. That's another thing to check off the list. Just because that's effed up doesn't make everything else just flat.
That's not another thing to check off the list. That is the thing to check off the list. Because if the system wasn't effed up, she wouldn't have been in that situation. Not only just my daughter wouldn't have been in that situation, but a whole slew of kids would never be put in those situations.
If you were paying, I just don't understand. If you were paying child support, why you wouldn't have been able to have her?
You don't understand the legal system. That's why. You don't know what a family court system is. Apparently, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the only man that has ever gone through this in this country.
But
I'm not the only one, and I'm not the first. I'm not the last. In fact, there's millions of us.
Right, exactly, and that further proves millions of y'all, exactly, and that further proves my point about how not every one of y'all, the millions of y'all with 12-year-old daughters, end up hanging themselves. Katelyn hung herself. That's word for word what Anthony repeatedly told her to do. Anthony has told his new 18-year-old girlfriend last year to hang herself. That's his go-to phrase when he's mad is, "You're worthless, hang yourself."
Yeah, okay. Anthony's a terrible human being.
You don't see that as harmful and detrimental?
Of course it is. But are you going to go to every door and ask if there's an adult in there that tells kids to hang themselves?
Oh my God. Just because you can't save everything doesn't mean it shouldn't be addressed. It's not all or nothing.
Okay, well, what do you want me to do then?
I don't want you to do anything. I reached out to you because it was obvious that, well, you said, "I find it amusing you think because we do not speak publicly about my daughter, that somehow equates to us wanting her memory to slip away. This is nonsense. People have a right to say what they want regardless of your feelings. It's called the First Amendment." And that was my point, was that, I'm exercising my First Amendment. I'm not trying to silence anybody.
Yeah, you are. You're exercising your First Amendment. But the moment that somebody else starts exercising their First Amendment and you don't like it, you get
When?
upset.
Please give an example.
Nonsense on YouTube.
Please give an example.
That's the difference.
Please give an example.
Please give an example. Okay, here's an example, firsthand. A band uses a clip out of my daughter's video that isn't copyrighted.
Nope, it's not that simple. She was dying.
What was the last thing you heard?
Basically, I was like defending myself because I was saying that I don't see how I was like silencing anybody. I did cordially and civilly say that maybe in hindsight they realized that that wasn't respectful. Like, I wasn't telling anyone to go after them, to shut them down, to silence them. That was going on in my comment section, yes, but that I, as my First Amendment right, as you said, I have a right to express emotion.
All right, well, the thing is, the First Amendment gives people the right to be disrespectful. I mean, it is. I don't like it. I don't like when people disrespect me like that. I don't like that they're using my daughter in that manner at all. But they got the right to do it.
But do they? Because she's dying in that moment. She's dying.
Yeah, and they still got the right to do it.
But I mean, but really from a legal standpoint, do they?
As far as I know, they do. I mean, I got a little bit more information that maybe the video could be considered copyrighted because she's a minor, but I'm not an attorney. But I do know copyright laws to the extent that if you take something and you transform it, then it's not a violation of copyright. So I'm going to talk to whoever the dickhead is that's the lead singer of the band, whatever. I'm going to ask him nicely to take that shit off. And then just depending on how that conversation goes, you know, I may back further legal ramifications, but really it just depends on that, because I'm not going to just jump straight to, well, that offends me, so now I have to do something completely irrational. Like, I'm offended all the time. This is not how it works. It's not how adults operate. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what else to say on that front. It's just...
Well, I don't know.
Every other month, I have to hear something else about my daughter.
Well, it's a pretty tragic, like, heartbreaking situation. She shared herself with the world, so that's inevitable.
Yeah, like every other child in 2019.
No, they did not live stream to the extent that she did, in my opinion. I have not yet to see any kid her age do that. Not a single one, actually.
They didn't live stream them killing themselves.
No, I'm saying they didn't actually make these, like, preceding daily vlog type live streams all day, vlogging her entire lifestyle of neglect and torment, and then kill herself. That's like a story. That's like a movie. That's like getting to know someone and then watching them vanish in the most tragic of ways at 12. That's a little more impactful than, you know, an article with a picture, or browsing through someone's Facebook a little bit, or, I mean, that's like a movie. I have never seen a case like Katelyn's when it comes to that, the getting to know her. That's why so many people, like, random, an influx of people, it seems like once a week will learn about Katelyn. That's what it seems like based on the comments. And I see that as a good thing. I mean, I know from your standpoint...
Well, it's not a bad thing. Right. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that people hear about Katelyn's case. Right. Hear about the tragedy that is the modern American family.
So, I mean, not everybody, though...
I just don't want to have to relive this every other month.
You know, I hadn't made a video or anything like that in quite a while.
I know you haven't. And I'm not blaming you for any of this. Right? But again, you're not the only YouTuber, right? You're not the only journalist for any of that shit, right? And it's not you. Like, I get this from people in my family. And even when somebody close to me in my family posts something on Facebook that isn't about that situation, but they want to be so fucking vague in what they're saying to make me think that maybe that situation is what they're talking about. I have to live with this every day, regardless. Right, so I don't particularly want to have to speak to the public about something that is immensely personal.
I don't think people, like, what people are hearing from you and what I'm hearing from you, and people, like, yeah, I'm not a dad, obviously. But, I mean, I know when I was in the shelter, the state demanded that I pay, or that I asked Tim to pay child support, and when I refused, they actually were talking about arresting us because they said I was being uncooperative with the state, even though I didn't want him to pay child support. So I do understand, in some regard, how they demand child support. I do get that. But, like, I think what it is, with everybody just is wondering why there was no more effort put forth. That's, to this day... what, and I mean, you say I don't understand, that's fine. Okay, I don't understand. Well, then explain what it is I don't understand. And, like, that's what people want to know. What is this, like, thing, this giant wall that kept you that we don't understand? Like, you can enlighten us, and that would be great. And then it would actually be preventative, like I was talking about. It would prevent, possibly... maybe a father in the future could hear your story and be like, oh, I should have taken this role or this action or taken this step or...
Well, I mean, there's nothing that I'm going to say that a father is going to hear and say, I should have did that. Because the only thing I could reference is my personal experience. And being that it is a personal experience, it is nothing but anecdotal evidence.
It's still insightful, though. I mean, even with Tammy, like, it actually helped me when my son comes to me emotional, I actually sit and really listen to him more, because I remember when Tammy ignored Katelyn, and even if I'm stressed and I'm in the middle of doing something, I will sit there and be like, talk to me about it, because people can learn bits and pieces. It can help. Anecdotal,
yeah, but that's just being empathetic to somebody else that has a problem. Right? I mean, exactly what you just said is, there are things going on in my life, but I still need to be empathetic to other people who have things going on in their life.
Right, but
I mean, that's not something that I can teach somebody. That's just something that they're going to have to learn. Now, but that's part of growing up. And in my personal situation, I've already said it over and over and over. The family court system has got to change. It cannot be 95% of the time women just get custody because they have a vagina. That can't be the case. It cannot work that way. It is never going to work that way and not have situations like Katelyn. Because 95% of women are not good people. 95% of men are not good people. The family court system has got to start being objective into whom they give custody of the kids to. Period.
So what do you think would have been different? I mean, obviously, Anthony would not have been... Well, wouldn't she still be able to go to
What
Tammy's?
do I think would have been different?
Yeah.
Katelyn would have been loved. She would have known that she was loved. She wouldn't have been mistreated.
But what was stopping you from letting her know you loved her? I heard that you lived, like, down the street. Like, you could have walked and stood in front of her house.
What are you...
I'm telling you the comments I get all the time that I know have been echoed at least,
Right,
like...
and I've already answered that.
But it doesn't resonate.
I did go over there a few times. But the moment that Anthony wants to threaten me with violence, that's it. You understand? There is nothing else past that.
Okay, so then why not go to the police
Because
and say he threatened me with violence?
I cannot put myself in the situation to where a physical action takes place on property that is not mine.
Yeah, but the police, it's your daughter, and the police intervene for things like that. Like,
okay, so you don't know what family court is then?
well, he's threatening physical violence.
This doesn't go to police. This goes to the sheriff's department because it's a civil dispute. And then it goes to a family court. Into which case, you then have a lying-ass piece of shit human like Tammy. You have a terrible fucking human being known as Anthony. And they're both going to go to court and testify. And then it's just me.
And you don't, I mean, Katelyn would have probably spoken
out. I don't know
out.
what world you live in.
Did it go to court?
There is no win for me in that situation at all. No win.
Did you tell a judge that he threatened violence?
Win.
So you told a judge he threatened violence on you?
What do you mean I told a judge?
Did it get to court is what I'm asking.
No. Why would I do that?
To get to Katelyn, because he's in the way.
Oh my God.
Well, that's what you said was the wall, was he was threatening physical violence.
That's right. He fucking threatened physical violence on his own property, to which I do not have a legal claim to be on. And I say his, but I guess technically it's Tammy's, but since they're married, then it's also his.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So then why, I mean, in knowing that, why wouldn't the court then be like, okay, well, this man needs to see his daughter?
The court does not give a shit if the man sees his daughter. That's not a thing.
So what do you think then could be changed with the system?
I just told you.
Being more fair to both sides? I mean, I really don't...
How about objectivism? How about saying, objectively, the child is better off living with the father? Or objectively saying, the child's better off living with the mother?
Wouldn't she still have been able to see Tammy, though, and be subjected to Anthony? Like, wouldn't y'all have still had shared custody?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So she still would have been...
But going to that trailer and seeing them for a few days and then being able to come back to a nice home with loving parent and loving grandparent and loving grandparent and being taken care of and not having your personal items stole and taken to the pawn shop and sold.
Who is doing
and
that?
Being there that can actually help you with your homework because they're not retarded. Yeah, I think that's a vastly different situation.
No, I agree.
So much different of a situation that she wouldn't have been told to lie to the other parent, that she wouldn't have been told how the other parent was such a a fucking miserable person and didn't do this and didn't do that, even though it was all lies. Like, I know you didn't like live through all of this, but I did, right? And any person that's been around me for years would tell you straight up. My whole plan was, by the time that Katelyn gets to the age that she can legally do something, she will come to me and we will talk, and she will get a full understanding of what her mother has put her through. And we will make amends for this.
Well,
and I told Tammy over and over and over, do what you want now. When Katelyn grows up, she will fucking hate you. And Tammy knew it. Tammy knew it the whole time, that when Katelyn was old enough to understand what was going on, she was going to hate Tammy.
well, how long were you planning on waiting? Like, when you say older, like, what age are you talking about? Like 14 or like 18?
15, 16, you know, about that age where kids start learning about adult activities, where they can't just be lied to.
So basically, like, you were wanting to just give it like a couple years, because I know my dad had that same mentality, and he literally, it made me feel like he never cared, and I still to this day don't think he does, because my whole life, like, he just blamed everything on my mom, and like, she was
right. Well, I mean, but again, that's anecdotal, right? Because it's not like I was never there for Katelyn.
Well, everything we feel
I
passionate about could be
a
anecdotal.
lot of things for Katelyn that nobody wants to. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit what people think, right? But I bought Katelyn all kinds of things. I bought her clothes. I took her shopping. I paid for her trip to Washington, D.C. with the school, if that was even a thing. Which, by the way, I don't know that that's a thing. I don't know that she ever went to Washington, D.C. I don't know what happened to any of that money that I gave Tammy for her to do all those things. I do know what happened to all the things that I bought her. They ended up at the fucking pawn shop.
Was it because of Tammy or Anthony?
Who cares?
Well, I guess it doesn't really matter.
If it was because of Anthony, then it was also because of Tammy.
Because I'm trying to get a time frame in my mind. If this was like before he entered the picture, if she was pawning things before he entered the picture, or after.
Well, I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that.
That it was after?
I mean, she took my daughter to Indiana to live with a dude when I went to Iraq. A dude that she met on the internet. And then proceeded to move to Missouri with another guy she met on the internet, with my daughter, who is still a toddler.
And the state didn't know about that?
What is the state going to do?
Well, that's irresponsible parenting.
Well, it is irresponsible, but the state ain't going to do shit about it. Again, it's almost like you think because what is moral and ethical must be also what the court system thinks is moral and ethical, and that's not reality. So when I say you have a narrative, right, and you want to look for evidence to support that narrative, and that's what this is. Because your narrative is not correct to reality. And the reality is, I was a soldier for 8.5 years. I was a paratrooper. I served in Iraq. I served in Afghanistan. There is not a single family court in this country that is about to give me custody of a child. Period.
Okay. And we all have a narrative. If we're human and we have a memory, we're going to have some sort of bias to some sort of experience by default.
Right.
Right.
But it's like you're not even trying to hear.
I am, but
what the reality is.
I am. But just because I can't exactly tackle the system right at this moment, like directly put my hand in it, doesn't mean that all the other antagonists in Katelyn's life should just be, oh, well, who cares? Like, let's not even look into it.
No. I didn't say that people shouldn't say who cares.
Well, I know, but it's being implied when you're acting like because it's not the system that therefore it's not like, I'm not like trying to make one bad guy.
Well, that's because when you go to try to tackle that system, you're going to really find why it is so difficult to change that system. Right? There's a lot of people and a lot of organizations that have a lot of money that is based around the system the way it is.
Oh, I know about all that. Like, I know about the CPS incentives. I know about the bonuses they get. I know why they were demanding that I force Tim to pay child support even when I didn't want them to. I know about the monetary incentive.
Well, I mean, you got 4 or 5 women's advocacy groups.
And the reason that those exist in the first place is because back when women didn't have rights.
Around.
I mean, I know
they hang around the courts.
Well,
they'll be right at the courthouse.
Yes, because back before women had rights, there was far more abuse. There was far more dads disappearing. I mean, the pendulum swings. Back then, it was swinging to that side of absent dads and abuse, and now it's swinging to the other side. So now we need to meet in the middle as a system.
Yet alimony still exists.
And that's why it needs to be cleaned up.
Imagine there being a bunch of advocacy groups for a gender of people that don't want to see equality, they want to see superiority.
No, it's not about that. The pendulum is swinging to the other side. The reason all those advocacy groups exist is because of years of women not having rights, being I mean, we still live on a planet where some women can't even show anything but their eyeballs. That's the reality. Yes, it's not anything like that here now, but I'm just saying. Like,
it's never been like that here.
Okay, not like
You're
that.
You're talking about Muslim majority countries.
Yeah,
I know. I was there.
Yeah, I'm not talking like here.
I've been to the countries where women actually don't have any rights. I've been there.
Yes, and just because it wasn't like theirs, where they get beheaded for giving them the wrong look, doesn't mean that us not being allowed to vote or read or have any say in anything doesn't mean that.
Not allowed to read. Are you serious?
Well, there was actually a time when men did not want us to become educated. Yeah. Actually, yeah. If you type in women's education, it pulls up a time when actually it was considered a right for men to have education and a privilege for women. There was like I want to say a couple decades of that. And if you even look at murder statistics and rape statistics and burglary statistics and violent crime statistics, yes, women do it, but men far more do it. Men make far more of absent parents.
You're absolutely correct, because it turns out that men are way more violent than women are when it comes to physical violence.
So that's why there's the advocacy
group. Psychological warfare, then women vastly kill in that measure, because we're different creatures. I mean.
And that's why the advocacy groups exist, though, because, I mean, women, when I was at the women's shelter, I've been in it 3 different times, women come in bruised up, beaten, barely able to walk. This is a reality. I highly doubt that many men come in on a daily basis to these shelters that are the other kinds of shelters.
You're absolutely right. They don't go into any shelter, because there's only like 2 men's shelters in the entire country. But what they do is they end up on the side of the street or under the bridge at a vastly larger rate than women do.
There are shelters for everybody in every county. That's a fact. So if they're not going, it's either drugs or something. I mean,
right.
It's the truth.
I mean, again, we're really seeing the problem, right? Is, and I'll say it again, women are the problem. But when I go to court and you go to court and you have 5 advocacy groups waiting for you to help you get through that, and I don't have a fucking thing waiting for me to get through that, we have a problem.
That's true. That is a problem. And that's why the pendulum needs to come back into the middle, because it has swung too much on the other side. And it's not fair to people like Katelyn, who are forced to live with a junkie and a rapist. And I'm going to call him that
because they don't care.
And CPS should have done something.
They don't care.
Right, and so because that's flawed,
who they hurt or who they affect or whose life they destroy.
So, right, so when I go after people, and by go after I mean like basically bitch, if I verbally bitch. I'm not actually going after anybody. If I verbally bitch about Anthony or the psychiatrist who actually came from, I think he came from like Jordan or something. He came from some Middle Eastern country. He can barely speak English. And he's constantly going on tropical vacations. I have stalked him. I know this. He never will ever address or change anything about his approach to 12-year-olds that are depressed, which is obviously not wise. It's not even advised for them to give Prozac to 12-year-olds, like for the brain development and everything, and hormones. So, I mean, all these things.
I'm not a doctor, and I could have told you that.
Right.
I mean, and again, so you say what would be different? Well, what would be different is I would never have allowed my daughter to take any shit like that. Would not have happened.
And I do believe
I
that.
don't give a damn what doctor would have told me that she needs to take it.
Based on what I know of you, I do believe that. But, you know, in the meantime, since I cannot do anything to the system right now, all these players in the game, like dads that are stuck with these kids who are stuck with the mom, and psychiatrists who are ordered by the state, by CPS, to throw pills at these kids. In the meantime, they need to try to be stopped. And, like, even if they can't just be, like, thrown in jail, it's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they need to actually revise what they're doing. Anthony, if he had some fear in him, and Luke, the reason Luke proceeded to rape a 13-year-old was because he got away. Even with video evidence given to Polk County Police, I guess that, I don't know what other kind of evidence they could possibly need. It was video evidence of him talking sexually to a girl who just told him he was 13 and doing it in multiple videos.
Right. But what do you want the Polk County Police to do to somebody that doesn't live in Polk County?
That's when we actually found out. Like, that's why Boston was able to do something even though the 13-year-old didn't even live in their county. They contact the other county. I mean, you can even do that with international affairs. If it's illegal, it just takes effort. And Polk County put no effort. If it's not an instant drug bust, it's almost like they don't want to put effort into anything.
Well, I mean, it is a pretty shit county, but...
Yeah, it has a reputation for a reason. People were saying that, like, when the mill or something like that was taken away, that, like, it turned into a meth town.
I don't know if that's particularly true for Polk County. I know it's true for Floyd County. And it happens pretty rapidly, actually. I grew up in Shannon, Georgia, which is like right outside of Rome, and then they lost their textile mill, and within 5 years it was just meth everywhere.
Mm. Yeah, it really is it reflects in the way that they don't pay attention to the kids in the community. But I mean, so that's like when I read your comment, it was like I can understand being upset that like I compared you to my absent dad or something, but like in terms of like the First Amendment, I encourage everyone, opposition included, to use their voice. It was literally a child's dying moment. I'm not talking about her crying or anything that led up to. I'm talking about her dying. It's like an execution, okay? It's like the audio from an execution is pretty much what it was. A self-execution. I mean, that's just not, legalities aside, and just because I don't think it's immoral, I mean, just because I don't think it's immoral doesn't mean I'm like that doesn't mean that me saying that is me trying to shut anybody down, but I have a right to say if I think something's disgusting, and I think it's disgusting, and I'm gonna say that. I'm actually shaking right now. Like, did you even, like, play it? Because it even plays her
Why would I
kicking.
even play it?
Good. It even
Why would I do that? I still haven't watched the video of my daughter doing that, because I don't see how it benefits me at all.
It do not, and it wouldn't. And many of us, like myself, it showed up in the feed, and it played, and bam. We were not expecting to see that. When I clicked that video today, I was not expecting to hear that. I can't even hear Katelyn's ringtone that played in her video, because, like, my son got a Cricket phone, and that was the default ringtone, and I raised my voice. I said, turn that off. Like, it's traumatizing, and that's why so many of us also feel connected to her. And, like, I can see how we might seem parasitic or something, or like a mob, but, like, it's a good thing you have. It's ignorance is bliss to that when it comes to that video, because
well, I just don't. It doesn't. It didn't do anything to me to listen to the song. It didn't do anything for me to watch any of those videos. All it will ever do is just anger me beyond belief.
And you have,
and
I mean,
I'm not a person that needs to get angry at that scale.
Yeah, I think Tammy's actually spoken about your temper before. I recall.
Well, it's not a temper thing, right? And Tammy.
Well, she said there was domestic.
But Tammy doesn't know what a temper is. Tammy will do things to you until you fucking break. Right? Again, it's the psychological warfare. I couldn't tell you how many times that me and Tammy would get in an argument, and I would try to leave, and she would take my car keys, she would take my IDs, and then she would take the fucking phones and take the batteries out of the phones. She would do everything she could do to keep me from leaving until she got what she wanted. Right? Tammy doesn't know anything about my temper. All Tammy knows is that she can eventually get what the fuck she wants by doing terrible shit.
I don't know.
But that's neither here nor there, because it's a whole other level of anger when you're talking about my daughter not being here anymore. I'm not doing it. I'm not putting myself through that. I'm not.
So what is it that you would like us to do, like, for people who don't want to forget her and people who, like, really admire her? Like,
I mean, y'all can do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to stop you from doing anything. To me, that's her. And I tell you what, because my sister posted something on Facebook about how bad 2016, 2017 was for her. And I read that, and immediately I said, well, fuck, I guess that's partly my fault. And so I had like a little breakdown over that. And then it turns out that my sister wasn't thinking anything about that. Right? That was me projecting onto other people because I still have guilt. So I don't think it's fair to say that Valerie can't have a good life.
No,
because something happened that Valerie couldn't control.
I see what you're saying, and I do agree. in hindsight. But when I played that song and
I know. It's upsetting.
well, but I'm saying no, it all came at me. I had just, read Valerie's little update. She's very public, very informative every single day. I had just read it, and like a few days prior, and then I hear this song, and nobody told me what it was gonna be like. They just said, you need to hear this. It all collectively just bam at one time. In hindsight, I can say yes. For her, maybe escaping in that way and like not thinking about it is her way of grieving. I guess I should respect people's individual ways of grieving. Because for me, it's like I feel like I have to suffer in order to grieve. Like I feel like it's the only way I'm truly making up for like pain I could have caused somebody is if I'm in pain. So like.
Yeah, but I mean, it's 2 years past. Well, people are gonna move on.
Not everybody. No.
I didn't say everybody. I said people.
I mean,
people will move on. My grandmother passed away 8 years ago now. 8 years ago, right? She's still sitting on our mantle, which, by the way, is also where I wanted Katelyn. But because I'm the dad, I don't get it my way.
But it's about preventable tragedies. I still think of the Krim kids who got their throats slit. I still think of Sandra Cantu. I still think of Kaylee Anthony. I think of tragic endings that should have never happened.
Right, you do those
every day.
Yeah, and I bless you for it. But what you do doesn't mean that's what everybody else does.
Well, for that, I apologize.
Right? And I can't. Right? Like, I have to work. I don't have a choice. I can't be handicapped because I have to think about my daughter every day. I cannot do it. I will get fired. I will never be able to hold a job. And it's very unlikely that I'm going to find a sugar mama to take care of me for the rest of my life. Right? And I'm throwing a little cheeky stuff there, but that's reality. Like, the reality is I have to work. And I don't want to be poor.
Katelyn would not want you, of what I know of Katelyn, she would not want you to be emotionally handicapped. She would want you to thrive. And she would want Tammy to thrive. And she would want Valerie to be happy. And she probably would not have agreed with me when I basically implied that, like, Valerie should be dwelling in things. So I do retract that. That was how I felt, though.
I don't want you to retract anything, right? I mean, that's not what any of this is about. Well, you didn't say Valerie to start with. You said her family. Her family doesn't care.
Well, the way I worded it was that they want her memory to evaporate into thin air, and then I said, or at least it appears that way, based on how whenever somebody says something, they try to shut them down.
I heard that, and that's why I said, that's asinine. That because we don't speak about her every day, or speak about her to the public.
No, it's because before she died. It's the days leading up to the days leading up to her dying, us seeing her live streaming all day, capturing her daily life, which is why we feel like no one cared. That's why. It's not because the following years nobody's talking. It's because the days leading up, and then nobody feeling bad enough to try to change what could have stopped that. And you did come out and talk about the system. I did not say, like that Matthew has never said anything. I did say that you were like my dad because you were absent. Yeah. I mean, you weren't in Katelyn's life. That's a fact. And, I didn't get...
No, that's not a fact. I wasn't in Katelyn's life for that portion of her life.
And that's...
Well, that's a difference. There's a difference there.
Yeah, there's a difference. And that's why I'm glad you're clarifying. That's one piece of the Katelyn, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Well, I mean, just all boils back to the very notion that Because a 12-year-old said something definitely does not make it true.
But it doesn't make it untrue.
And 12, well, it doesn't make it untrue, but what we do know is that they're very open to suggestions.
What do you mean?
What I mean is, if you take a 12-year-old, right, and you tell them, your dad is bad, your dad does this, your dad does that, well, they're going to think that's true.
She didn't really say anything bad about you, though. You said you've never watched her live streams.
I never watched any of her videos, right? What I'm saying is, well, I know for a fact that Tammy said those things to her. Right? That's not even a question in my mind.
Well, what does that have to do, though, with Katelyn not being honest, necessarily?
Well, because 12-year-olds lie. This should not be like a shocker. Your kids have never lied to you.
Okay, yeah,
Ever happened.
Severity, frequency, and detail should come into play when assessing whether or not somebody's lying, and considering the fact that she multiple times, actually more than multiple, enrages, crying fits, even when Anthony wasn't there. So it's not like something had just happened with him. When she's recalling things, it's always the same story. It's elaborate.
Okay, I never said that she was lying about any of those things.
Then what are you referring
to? What I said is, you can't take a 12-year-old's testimony by itself. And I will also say, you can't take anybody's testimony.
I was just about to say,
itself.
Age does not make somebody exempt from being honest. There are pathological liars in their 50s.
Absolutely, it does not. But my point to the 12-year-old is they're very susceptible to information. They don't have the tools to negotiate what is true and what is not. And they just don't.
So what do you think she was confused about? Are you saying in terms of her views on you, she was skewed because of
views on anything? I talked to my daughter on the phone one time, and I'm sure her mom was standing right there beside her because that's what she always did. But she told me that she doesn't need to know anything about the world. She doesn't need world history. She doesn't need any of that. Because she's not going to leave the United States.
I remember you telling me that.
I was dumbfounded. Right, but I know where she got that from. She got that from her ignorant ass mom and stepdad.
But just because she's believing some dumb, ideologies and stuff doesn't mean that her accounts of tragic, repeated crimes on her body.
I didn't say that it did. So you're still trying to equate me saying that because she accused Anthony of something, and no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're susceptible to information. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask me, did Anthony do something? Well, I don't know. If you're asking me, did Katelyn accuse him of doing something, I would say, well, that's what I hear because I haven't actually watched any of those videos.
Okay, well, what do you believe?
Telling me that, and I would say, then yeah, she accused him of it.
What do you
Would I
believe?
believe my daughter over Anthony? Absolutely.
From a logical standpoint, even if you didn't even know Katelyn and you just looked at these, a list of hearsay, evidence, whatever you want to call it, what would you feel?
Well, I don't know because I didn't watch any of the videos.
Well, I'm telling you that she said on multiple occasions that he called her worthless. To hang herself, he'd buy the rope.
Right. Well, I don't really doubt any of that because
Well, that's pretty serious. If he said that in text message to her, shortly before she did that, he could be in trouble. Michelle Carter had to spend jail time, and she was actually either 17 or 18. I believe she was 17. She got in trouble because she was telling someone to kill themselves.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So, it's the same concept. And just because that's not a fix-all doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen at all.
Right. Well, I never.
And that's why I come out and like.
I never said that was okay. No, I would condemn that wholeheartedly. And again, right, and this is harkens back to the had I known that was going on at the time, this whole conversation would be free Matt from prison after he killed somebody. But that wasn't the case because, well, I mean, all they did was tell Katelyn how terrible of a fucking person I was, and that I didn't care about her, and I know they told her that all the time. Susceptible to information. And I mean, it's just the way it is. I wish it wasn't that way, but, kids are kids. And they trust their parents. No matter how terrible they are.
So if right now you could go back in time and the system was just the way it was, but you knew what could happen, would you do anything differently? Is I think what people want to know.
Well, it's not if I knew what could happen.
Right.
It's if I knew what would happen. And absolutely. I mean, that goes without asking. I've already answered that question before, too.
So what would you do differently? I don't think that was actually answered. Because that's what can be preventative for other dads.
No, it's not going to be preventative, because I just told you pretty fucking clearly that what you would be talking about right now is getting me out of prison for killing people. If the option is laid before me that your daughter dies or you go to prison, I'm going to take prison.
No, I'm talking about realistic options, like, recording Anthony
that
possibly.
Is realistic. There's nothing more realistic than that. There is no legal recourse for me to have done something differently. Right? Because the question is, if I knew my daughter was going to die. Right? So, absent of Tammy or Anthony actually killing my daughter, there's no other legal recourse.
Okay.
Because all of the legal recourse had already gone through. She'd already tried to kill herself at school. CPS had already been there 2 different times. There's no other legal recourse.
And that's another thing is people said that nobody even called her when she was in the hospital after trying to kill herself. And that you knew about it.
Well, that depends on which time you're talking about.
The last time, the most recent time.
Well, I didn't go personally because Tammy and Anthony were there.
But that's Katelyn.
But my family members did go, and they definitely relayed the message to her as to why I could not be there.
On the phone, though. I'm not trying to call her. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. It's just that I've had...
You're not going to make me feel bad.
Okay, good. I've had my dad, though, use those excuses in the past. And, it doesn't matter when you're a child like her.
But there's no excuse because the message was relayed, right? That is it. I mean, I cannot talk to my daughter on the phone because her mom is going to be right there beside her. Right there. So there's nothing that I can do
what
with
would she
my
have
daughter,
done? I don't get
it. That is between me and my daughter.
What would Tammy have been able to do if, I'm confused. What, take the phone or... even if you heard her bitching in the background, that's still your daughter.
No, there's no bitching in the background. There is me talking to my daughter, but really talking to Tammy. Because me and my daughter aren't having that conversation. Me and Tammy are having that conversation. You understand? It's not as if Katelyn has the phone to her head and then she's telling Tammy what I'm saying. It's that Katelyn has the phone away from her head and then Tammy's listening and then telling Katelyn what to say. So much so is that if I said anything out of line, Tammy's right on the phone to begin with. It's like, I know I started this to begin with as if it's much like dictatorship from North Korea. But you don't get the opportunity to have personal time. There is no one-on-one ever. That's not ever going to happen. And it can't happen. It specifically can't happen when you know you're doing illegal shit.
Forgive me if you already answered this, because this is where I'm still just... When you said he threatened you because it was his property, so legally he could do that or whatever, like, at that point, because he was the barrier, you said it yourself, that he was the barrier, his threats were the barrier. So that's when people and myself wonder, why then was that barrier not brought up over and over and over and over and over at court until something was done?
So why didn't I spend all of my time and everything I have trying to break through a court system that is set against me?
To get to your daughter? Absolutely. I mean, what is time if you're not able to even be with your child? What is time? What does it matter?
Well, I guess to somebody who's not expected to do anything with their life, nothing. Why would I be expected? Why would I be expected to go through all of that shit?
Because Katelyn's worth it.
And not Tammy be expected to say, I can't take care of Katelyn, here she is.
Well, it's not Katelyn's fault that the system is effed up right now, though. Like,
no fucking kidding.
So why make her have to be feeling like you don't care?
Tammy's fault.
Right.
Because all she ever had to do is say, I can't do this. Here's Katelyn. How about the fact that I told Tammy, just bring her to my fucking house every day before school, and I'll put her in Pepperell. I'll put her in a different school. All you got to do is bring her here, and she can get on the bus at my fucking house. Nobody has to know likewise. Not good enough.
You even said the system was crazy, and so in knowing that, wouldn't you rather submit to it to see Katelyn than just cave into it? I think that's all of our sentiments.
Okay. This is fruitless because it's impossible. It is impossible unless you have a wealth that is substantial. Right? And by wealth that is substantial, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was going to cost me better than $5,000 to get goddamn divorce.
Did you ever tell Katelyn that?
What do you mean did I ever tell Katelyn that?
That's what I mean.
Why in the world would I talk to my adolescent child about the problems between me and her mother.
I'm talking about the
expense. That's what a fucking shit person does.
No, not when it comes to the barrier.
She doesn't need to know about any of
She needs to
things.
know why you're not communicating.
I can't help what Tammy does. I can't help what Anthony does. But I'm not going to lower myself to their fucking shit level.
Telling her the barrier, the monetary barrier that's hey, Katelyn, just so you know, it's not that I don't care and that I'm purposely not talking to you and I know they're brainwashing you. It's literally because I cannot afford an attorney right now to, like, you know, get rid of Anthony and to get you to stay with me.
Katelyn knew that I gave them money. She knew that because I did it right in front of her.
But money's not love. That's not like a personal sentiment. I mean, you can pay a prostitute. Like, that doesn't equate to love. Children, that's not...
There is no way on this fucking earth that Katelyn did not know that I loved her and that my family loved her. That's not even remotely possible. It's not even remotely possible. What Katelyn says on her videos or whatever the fuck anybody got this from, I can't answer to that. But there was never a point in time into which I talked to my daughter, or that I actually got to see my daughter, or I got my daughter over at my house.
She said all you, like...
Never questioned.
Her image of you was that all you do is play Warcraft and smoke weed. That's what she said in a video, and I don't know if that was something she witnessed, or if that's what Tammy told her, or Anthony. That was...
Well, it ain't sure what she witnessed.
And that she was listening to a song in the car and turned it down and said, yeah, like my dad or something like that, because it was singing about, like, he doesn't love me. So those were the two references to you from Katelyn. Everything else was toward Anthony and Tammy.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can feel like the system is more to blame, though, than Anthony. Because many kids are in Katelyn's position in terms of the system, but not Anthony. There can be a-hole stepdads, but not ones touching you sexually, and in the same breath saying, hang yourself, I will buy the rope, you worthless whore. That's not...
Well, I mean, you don't know how many of them there are.
Okay, I don't, but I do know not all of them kill themselves like Katelyn. If you look at the...
but females try to kill themselves at a rate that is 50 times or 50% more than men do, and yet they succeed 75% less of the time. Right, so I mean, females typically try to kill themselves to show that they need help, and then they get help. And then men try to kill themselves, and they succeed. Right, so you don't know how often this happens.
And it's not normal to...
All you know is that when they rarely succeed, and this is that case, then it's tragic. Right? And then again, you don't even know how many boys are being put through this. Because, you know, little boys also get molested. Mm-hmm. They also get told really sick shit from adults.
Yeah, right? But we all need to, like...
This is a gender thing. This is a kid thing, right? Uh-huh. I don't think it's right for an adult to tell a child how much their parents don't give a shit about them. I don't think that's right.
No, absolutely not.
I don't think it's right to take a childhood away from a child at all. And that's what I refuse to do with Katelyn. And I made that abundantly clear with Tammy. I'm not talking to Katelyn about the problems that me and you have. She's not old enough. She doesn't fucking know what's going on. Don't do it. And then what I would get from Tammy is, well, she's really smart. You don't even know what she understands. Yeah, I know that a fucking 10-year-old child doesn't understand adult things. no matter how intelligent they are. I mean, I don't think Anthony is any less of a culprit than the system. And at the same time, I don't think that Tammy is any less of a culprit than Anthony or the system. What I think is the system is fucked, Anthony is fucked, Tammy is fucked, and that equals my child being dead.
But so you don't think that Anthony's deliberate infliction of torment?
What I just said.
No. I was going to say is worse.
Equal and guilty.
So you don't think his was worse? Deliberate infliction of torment. Deliberate. Multiple.
Okay. Well, I will say it like this then. If all the accusations are true, right? If they're all true, he is by far the worst one in that scenario.
That's refreshing.
But I don't know that they're all true, right? So if they are all true, then absolutely.
Is Anthony like threatening you to this day or something? Because sometimes I feel like you're afraid to even say anything about him because like he threatens everybody, and he's like,
who, Anthony?
Yeah, he's a raging alcoholic.
Am I scared of Anthony?
Well, I don't mean like shaking in your boots scared, but I mean like, you know, is he threatening you?
No, if I ever see him in public, I'm liable to go to fucking prison for killing somebody. Am I scared of Anthony? No. Not at all.
I just know he always goes around threatening everybody, so that's kind of...
I don't give a fuck. The only reason that I didn't go to prison before for doing that is because of Katelyn. Katelyn is not here anymore. So the only reason that he's still fucking breathing is because I haven't seen him.
So when's the last that you spoke to Tammy then?
The funeral?
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't have anything to say to Tammy. I told Tammy then, this is the last time I'm civil to you at all.
Well, I know, but like, there's so much of Katelyn and AJ and Abby that like I just assumed people would.
They're not my children.
But they're half of Katelyn.
I know that'd be like, oh, that's so cold and all that. No.
Well, they're trying to. It's like nobody even knows where they're gonna live and who's gonna adopt them because, like, yeah.
But I mean, it's just not my problem. And I know how cold that sounds. I'll be like the internet asshole for a day. I didn't bring those kids into existence.
They're all that's left of Katelyn. I'm not saying like you should adopt them, but like.
Oh no. They not anything to do with Katelyn.
But she very much.
Zero with me. So Katelyn was 50% me. I would like to think probably more than that. But I feel really bad for what they're gonna have to grow up with.
Well, but you don't have to feel bad if like people step in and try to help steer their path. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to adopt them again. I'm just saying like, you know, you're close by.
Well, I don't mind if people step in and do something for them. That's not on my radar at all, and more power to them. I'm just saying I'm not going to.
Because they could become victims to the system.
My Aunt Cinnamon has tried as far as I know to get custody of them and all kinds of crazy shit, and this is not anything to do with me. And I'm not doing it. The problem is I can't be the one that does this.
And that's why a lot of us speak out, because we recognize that a lot of y'all can't acknowledge it because it's too painful. Like, we do recognize.
I mean, this is not that it's too painful. It's that Katelyn killing herself is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but it's not the only bad thing that's ever happened to me. I've been drugged through the court system on the civilian side, on the military side. There's no way that I can be the face of anything in the public because I have too much of a past that's going to get drugged up. And it's not that I've ever done anything wrong. It's that I'm not drudging back through all of that shit to defend myself against baseless accusations. And that's all it will be. And politicians aren't even going to get close to it. The moment any of that shit comes up, that's it. They will distance themselves from me like I have AIDS.
Okay, but what about somebody like me with a clean record who talks about it publicly and gets the public fired up, and then we all contact the county, and then we contact the Atlanta.
I've never said for you not to do that.
Well, because you referred to that as kind of a mob mentality, which, I mean, mob doesn't have...
No. I said going after specific individuals is a mob mentality, right? So, whipping the mob up against the kids in the MAGA hat in New York, that's a mob, right? That is unnecessary.
But nobody's done that.
It is antithetical to the beliefs that this country was founded upon.
But nobody's done that in this case. Nobody has done anything that's like mob related at all.
Well, okay, and I respect that.
If that, I mean, I wish honestly they had, because then Luke wouldn't have been able to rape somebody.
Well, you don't know that.
It would have decreased the likelihood. He was rich and spoiled, and he was like, he didn't do all he did was sit around with his rich adopted parents and lure teenage girls. That was proven with video evidence, thank goodness, because then otherwise people would be saying, well, how do you know? Well, that's how. And so, you know, so sometimes a mob, there doesn't have to be a negative connotation with mob. I mean, sometimes it is necessary.
Yes, there does have to be a negative connotation for a mob. There does.
Why?
Because they're never necessary.
Not if they get physical.
Yes, because it is better for 10 guilty people to go free than for one innocent person to suffer.
But I'm not talking about, like, torturing somebody. I'm talking about, like, the kind of mob that is...
What do you mean torturing somebody?
Well, because how's an innocent person going to suffer?
If you put out information that this person is a rapist, and then they're not actually a rapist, do you have any idea the amount of damage that's going to do to them?
I do, and while I appreciate your, like, you know, empathy for innocent people, which I understand that, and when it comes to Katelyn, your daughter's case, where has a mob mentality where someone is suffering because of commentary on YouTube? I would like to know, other than me and my daughter getting death threats from Tony Baisley in the UK and looking up my address, I would like to know who is actually suffering from talking. Because Anthony hasn't suffered.
No, man, I don't know what Anthony does.
Well, he hasn't. He does drinking parties, and he procreates, and he dates 18-year-olds, and I'm sure maybe in his mind he's afraid of death because of what he's done. I don't know. But Tammy's suffering because of her own cycle of addictive personality, in my opinion, and what she grew up with. Because I heard how she grew up, and it wasn't fair. And yeah, she could have gone the route Valerie did, but she's a different person than Valerie.
Well, no, and I also got her out of that situation, and she couldn't wait to get back to it.
Well, I don't think she, like, wanted to be miserable. I think it's just some people, it's been proven that impulsive part of their brains is more, you know, it's just more impulsive. They don't have as good a coping mechanism. I'm not, like, addiction sucks, but Valerie didn't have that, I guess.
But she didn't do drugs when she was with me. None of this was a problem. Drugs wasn't a problem. There was no addiction that was a problem. There was her fiending to get back to that trailer, to live a life of no responsibility. Because her parents didn't have any responsibility, and that's what she wanted. She did not want to live a life where she had responsibility.
And don't you see that as like an illness?
It's an illness as much as people that want to live on welfare for their entire life. So are you going to say like 30% of the country is mentally ill because they don't want to accept responsibility?
Well, when you bring in kids, that does make it bad, but I feel like if someone wants to live a half-ass life and they don't, and they want to live in a trailer.
What I got a problem with is if they want to live in the trailer and then expect everybody else to pay for their shit. I do got a problem with that. Because why do I have to work to pay for my shit and pay for their shit?
Well, if the adult is consenting to pay for it and they want to, I don't see any problem with it at all. If there's an agreement that they want to, take care of that person, I don't see any problem with it at all.
Okay, we're not talking about a housewife, though. I mean, this is not the thing.
Well, right? No. I mean, I'm talking about in any arrangement. If you moved in with your buddy Bob and Bob said, hey, dude, I'll pay for
it. But that's not what Tammy was doing. It was not like an arrangement Tammy was making with people so that she didn't have to work. I mean, maybe that was the case with her and Anthony for maybe, I don't know, at least a small portion.
Okay, so there are people who are addicted to not working.
Tammy just wanted me to have to pay for everything.
Well, I don't determine a person's worth or anything like that based on how much they're willing to work or not work. There are plenty of people who are addicted to working and making more and more and more and extra money and all this, and they are not necessarily good people. So I don't determine someone's worth on that.
No, it is only the fact that while they've shunned the responsibility of their children, they're still responsible for themselves, and even if they're putting their kids off on some kind of child watching service, whatever it is, whatever child care it is that they're using, they're still paying for that, and they're still paying for the house the child to come back to. While it might not be good for the child, they're still taking responsibility for all that. Whereas in the situation with Tammy, she's not taking responsibility for any of it. And it shows now that she doesn't have a trailer to go to that she didn't pay for and wasn't paying for. She doesn't have a car that she didn't pay for or wasn't paying for. She doesn't have anything. Because all she's ever done is refuse to take any responsibility for anything.
Who empowered her? Who stepped in and tried to empower her and help? I'm just curious.
Me.
No, I mean when she was with Anthony.
I took her out of that shit.
I'm talking about when she sunk back into it and got with Anthony. I'm not saying you should have.
Nobody. Are you kidding me? Her family is the same way. It is everybody except for Valerie.
Yeah, and I heard that according to Violet, I think it was Violet, when Valerie approached Anthony and confronted him about everything before Katelyn, he got physical on her. And so she never came back.
I don't doubt it.
So she never came back. So why was nothing done? I just don't get it. I would have called the police. I would have been like, okay, so my brother-in-law, I need to file a report. I just don't understand, the hush-hush, And if maybe something was reported, and I don't know, but, again, why is nothing ever...
Well, I don't know either, because I didn't know anything about that until just now. So I don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah, Courtney could fill you in more on that.
What I would say is I don't doubt that happened. Right? But Tammy's got her own life that she's responsible for. Right? She's not going to put herself in harm's way.
I know, and like I said, when it comes to Tammy, though, not everybody copes the same way. So when you tried to help her and empower her, and you did for a little bit, and then she sunk back in even deeper, at that point, I guess it's like, where, like, why?
It's not that she sunk in. It's that she never wanted to leave. She never wanted to leave. That's the life that she always wanted.
Are you certain? How can you be certain of that, though?
It was always just about how much money she could drag out of me. That is all it ever was. And I don't know. Maybe it was the fact that that's the way she was raised. It could be. I don't know. I didn't know her whole childhood.
I know she saw her dad dead in the bed when he killed himself. That's pretty traumatizing for a child. And
she did not see her dad in her bed when he killed himself.
Okay, well, that's what's spread.
Oh, imagine that. Another fucking lie from that family. She was with me when her dad killed herself.
That's what Debbie said, so I'm just saying.
Oh, imagine that. A fucking another liar that only wants to fucking live on everybody else's fucking income. Tammy was with me when her dad killed herself. I drove Tammy over to the trailer, picked up Debbie, and drove them both to the fucking hospital.
What do you think of Steve? Because he actually was referring to Tammy. I never talked to you about this. I think it was like a year and a half ago. It was a year ago. And I was so perturbed by what he was saying. He was saying online, publicly, that Tammy, that he knew she was an addict, but he just saw her as a functioning addict. Like, how is that even, isn't that an oxymoron? Like, how's that even a concept? Like, she was a mother.
Who?
Tammy. She was a mom.
Who said that about him?
Steve. Uncle Steve. Steve Parrish.
He's just another liar. Like...
But I'm saying he shamelessly admitted that he came into that trailer and that there were like pills and stuff and that he knew she was a user and an abuser and that he just chalked it off to her being a functioning addict. And is that like some common thing in Georgia? Like that?
No, it's not.
Because in my book, there's no such thing as a functioning addict. If you have to rely on something like a substance that knocks you out, then you're not functioning. And so that means he knew.
I mean, it depends on what you're talking about and what the addiction is.
Well, I'm talking about drugs that knock you out. I'm not talking about food addiction. I'm not talking about, like, someone who does... I know some celebrities say... I've never even tried a cigarette, so obviously I've never tried, like, speed. But I know some celebrities say that they've, like, done cocaine and they've dabbled in it and they're fine. But I'm talking about, like, you know, the benzos.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying, though, right? Because you could say anybody that smokes cigarettes is a functioning addict of cigarettes.
No, I'm talking about mind-altering substances like benzos that literally, it says on the bottle, to be careful with operating machinery.
Right. Well, that's not a thing, right? It's not a thing that you could walk into that trailer and say anybody was functioning regardless if they were an addict.
Exactly. Good point. So, like, Steve's...
Right. The addiction is something second... in that whole scenario. It's not, but he's a liar. I mean, so you couldn't seriously take anything any of them say on face value. Or you're not doing a very good job if you do.
All he ever does is talk about his role in the military and then basically goes on about how Tammy was a functioning addict and he knew that, but he didn't realize it would get to the point that it did, and then he goes on more and more about his military expertise. So that's...
Yeah, it's fucking reserve military career. Reserve. Not active duty. And even then, I don't know how much any of that is true. I don't bother to check. I don't really give a shit. you know. But he's a fucking moron, and he's a liar. I mean, the whole right off the get-go, oh, well, I got honorably discharged. Well, I didn't get, or dishonorably discharged, and that didn't happen. Didn't happen. And then I heard oh, well, I never went to war.
Who said
yeah,
that?
All right, man.
That you didn't go to war?
Yeah.
I've not heard that one.
Fucking Steve and Debbie were pushing it.
Well, he talks so incoherently. I do realize he's very old, but I don't read the entirety of what he says because a lot of it is jumbled and makes no sense. And it's not even about Katelyn. It's just like 90% himself and then 10% Tammy.
Yeah, I know. Because that's all they all are. You know, again, this is something I've been saying from the get-go. All of them are terrible people. They don't give a fuck about anybody else other than themselves. And that's all you're ever going to hear. Because they don't care. They just don't care.
I just don't want this to happen anymore, kids. So, like, when I heard that song, it brought everything back instantly. It brought back how if 2 years ago someone would have said, you know what, nothing's going to be done. Luke's going to go rape somebody, even though police are going to get literal video evidence in their face. And he's going to go rape a 13-year-old. Yep. And Anthony, he's going to procreate again. And he's going to verbally abuse and tell an 18-year-old girl to hang herself who he takes advantage of. And, you know, Tammy's going to keep on. She did pass a drug test. I gave her kudos for that, I guess. But, you know, she's not going to have the kids because not much change is going to happen when it comes to, like, getting, you know, trying to get on your feet or going to a rehab or anything progressive in any way. Like, I wouldn't have believed it 2 years ago if someone told me that. So the fact, like, I'm talking to you again now, 2019, and literally her phone never was even checked. And I know you said, like, well, how do you know? Well, tell me it has been, and then I'll believe it, because the case has been closed for a while. I know for a fact, I found out because of Atlanta. Atlanta told me that if they transferred the phone to Atlanta, they would do a data recovery on it. It would cost $1,000 for one device. But all it would take is getting Katelyn's phone and doing data recovery, and I would literally bet $500 on my name. I would bet $500 on my name that there were messages from Anthony in the moments before Katelyn stormed out of that trailer. He blamed her for Tammy kicking him out. He tried to come back. Bam, that's when all that happens. I have no doubt in my mind. No doubt. That's why he was on her Facebook. It's the most logical, practical. If it was a case file and I didn't know any of these people, I would say the same thing. If it was just a case file with anonymous names. So, yeah, that's my narrative, and it exists based on logic and reason and practicality. Not just emotion. Like a libtard, like I know you say. That's not, it's based on logic and reason, frequency, patterns. I mean, that hasn't been done. So I'm irate. Like, when I heard that song, it wasn't even so much about these guys singing death metal. It was the fact, hearing that bucket kick. Hearing the bucket kick. It was just a wave of, a reminder of, hey, look where we are now. And what it scares me is I'm a mom and I'm very close to my kids. And my son's very emotional, and you could say emo and stuff. He reminds me a lot of Katelyn when it comes to so much. And, like, it scares me when I think about what the system has tried to do before when Tim was drinking a lot and I had to go away. What they tried to do, they were literally threatening my residence because I wouldn't give him pills. They were threatening my home. I was in a hotel 2 weeks before Christmas because I wouldn't give my son risperidone because they diagnosed him with oppositional defiance disorder. It was absurd, and it was because they make money. The state makes money when the therapists throw these pills at these kids. I was putting him in activities and therapy and extracurricular things that actually would make him blossom, not make him a zombie. And my God, he was 10. He was 9, even worse. He was 9. He had never harmed anything. He wasn't even a physical child. And so, I mean, I've seen firsthand what can happen. And so the psychiatric aspect of your daughter, really resonates with me. And he could do it again. He could do it again to another kid. I mean, almost all these kid suicides I read, and I say suicides in quotes, because a lot of these kids, if you really look into the case more and you follow them on Facebook and you read what the parents say, a lot of these kids were actually on things that cause, on pills because of the state, that cause suicidal ideation.
Yeah, well...
And they don't mention that in these articles.
I never bought the bully narrative as a kid.
Right, and the thing is him touching her sexually, Anthony touching her sexually, and it's a major mind fuck. And it's a major, you literally feel like, you do feel worthless. And the fact she was actually living with that, I wasn't even living with this person. She was actually living with this guy, and he was supposed to be the role of a dad? I can't even imagine. So I don't even consider that like bullying. That's why I always just call it torture, because that's what I see it as. He literally stole her. When it comes to kids, I mean, the system should be a little more urgent. You know, time is of the essence.
They're not. They're not urgent at all. The first time I heard from Child Support Services is the day after my daughter killed herself. So I'm fairly certain the urgency is not at the top of their list.
Okay, so the interview is now over for you guys. It actually didn't end here, but, well, technically the interview did. He started talking to coworkers, and then the conversation kind of veered off track, and it was getting super late anyway. It was actually past the time that we had originally planned for to aim for bed, because he had to get up early, and so did I. So I chopped all that out. It's completely unnecessary, unrelated to Katelyn. But that's it. So sorry that I sounded so obnoxious. I tend to when I am not composed, and I'm not really ever composed unless I'm first meeting somebody for the first time, or even then, if it deals with a topic like this, I'm not gonna care about what I sound like. Trust me, I'm well aware of what I sound like, and I know it's annoying. So I'm just putting that out there. But still, in the end, the message got heard, the sentiment was heard, the feelings were felt, and that's what mattered. And that's it. So feel free to post your comments below how you feel about this, if you still have questions or whatever. All right, thank you.